This week's episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show comes with a little bit of a backstory. What you're about ready to hear is a conversation, an interview that I had with Jim Newcomb. And it was originally designed to be a conversation that I thought would only make sense in my hobby podcast, Cliff's Notes on Amateur Radio. Jim Newcomb is a guy who had an incredibly awesome career with Icom America, one of the world's leading radio manufacturers for amateur radio and other types of radio communications. However, it became very clear as we were going through this conversation that this is not just a story about how a gentleman got involved in a career in amateur radio and developed a passion for amateur radio, although it is that. And the interview you're about ready to hear is in my show called Cliff's Notes on Amateur Radio. This conversation with Jim is an incredibly powerful story that encapsulates so many powerful insights and messages when it comes to the entrepreneurial journey. And that's why this is a very special episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards. Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Welcome back, my friend. As I shared, I have a special episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show for you. I don't often bring interviews to this podcast. I like the solo hosted format style. However, there's something about the entrepreneurial journey and hearing somebody's story, especially when there's so many key elements that just lead to some incredible success in developing a company that, quite frankly, is doing incredibly well in the world today. And how did that story come about? One of my favorite podcasts that is an interview-based format show is a show by I think his name is Guy Raz, and it's How I Built This. I haven't listened to it as much lately, but back in the early days, I would listen to those probably first 25, 30, 40 episodes, and they were all people interviewed that had developed incredible companies that I've heard of, products and or services that I know a great deal about, that actually add a lot of value to a lot of people's lives, and maybe in some cases, maybe even my own. And I enjoyed hearing interviews about how did that business get started? And I always enjoyed the unexpected insights. One of the ideas that I came away from, especially with those first 20, 30 episodes of How I Built This, was how so many conversations seem to indicate that one of the things that's a key element of what led to the success of such a major brand, a major business, is the fact that the person who started didn't actually know very much or was quite ignorant about how that industry works. Now, that's not the story of Jim Newcomb, although there's some powerful insights. But what I'm getting at is it's through hearing so many different stories, it's like, you know, the fact that we were so naive that we didn't know what you couldn't do, so we just did things that weren't supposed to work if you were in the industry and you had known what to do and what not to do and what people say should be avoided. We didn't know that. We just went and did it, and boom, one thing led to another. And so I love those kind of stories, and that particular insight is not necessarily relevant to this story, but there are so many unique little hints at what does bring somebody to the successful launch of a business that succeeds in building a profitable, full-time, self-employed lifestyle. And there's so much in this story, and I can't wait to share it with you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set this up and say, listen, this is obviously a podcast episode that I put together for my amateur radio hobby podcast. And I was just excited to have a conversation with somebody who worked with Icom America for so many years and then left that to start a business called Lido Radio Products, a company that I've already purchased several different products even before I was ever introduced to Jim. So that's what this original premise was, but I don't want you to listen to it from an amateur radio perspective. I want you to hear and listen for the insights about the entrepreneurial journey, about a man who was serendipitously, I can't say the word, you know what I mean, through serendipity was led down a path that he couldn't have expected. You couldn't have prepared. And that's what I love about so much success. We oftentimes look at other people's stories and say, I want to do what they did. And we think that they could just tell us what to go and do. But there are some things that can't be duplicated. However, there are some insights that can be applicable anywhere and everywhere. And if you apply them, they will get results. There's so much. And I'm going to share at the end of the episode some of the insights I took out of this conversation right here with Jim Newcomb of Lido Radio. I think I said in my email, I'm relatively new to amateur radio. Wanted to get into it when I was 17 years old, but failed my test by 1 point and went down the rabbit trail of telephone modems, BBS, internet, early internet, and online business. So I went down a completely different rabbit trail of just absolutely going all in on technology. But now it's come full circle. I'm all in on amateur radio.
Yeah, I remember when you were 17, the test was a lot different. So when I worked at Icom, the first thing they said is, you got to get your ham license. The owner came down. You're going nowhere in this company if you don't get your ham license. So he hooked me up with this person, Harry and Mary Lewis at the Tacoma Amateur Radio Club. And I went there 5 nights a week, and it was dry and boring. And the test, there was no cheating. It was full on. And so I eventually got my general. And at the time, you had to do 13 words a minute, CW. And because I had the Icom, label on me, I had to get good scores, because we were well known in the community up there. But yeah, so when you were 17, it's a lot different taking the test now, because I retook it and it's pretty easy.
Oh yeah. Well, I took it when I was 17, and it was a challenge to say the very least. And I think they had a thing where it was a no code license that you could get first, and I didn't even pass that. I figure if I pass that, then I'll learn the Morse code and get that. And I think you had up to 12 months at the time that you had to then advance to the code portion. But I missed, like I said, I missed it by that 1 point, and I'm like, and
that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, I believe in the serendipity of just how things happen the way they're meant to happen and stuff like that.
Right.
And part of me wonders if I would be as passionate about amateur radio as I am today had I actually gone in and started back then. No doubt in my mind, I would have learned and explored and gained all sorts of insights that I didn't get back then that I'm getting now. But quite frankly, I don't know that I would have been as interested in learning back then as I'm interested in learning today.
Yeah.
And then there are some things that amateur radio has going on today that didn't even exist 5 or 7 years ago, let alone 30 some odd years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Or 40.
That's very true. Yeah. So, my journey was, because they made me get my license, I wasn't interested in it. I really could care less. So once I got my license, it just allowed me to move through the ranks at Icom, which is all I was interested in, right? And then I'll fast forward. I was there probably 10 years, and they had a new person coming in to run the company that I totally disagreed with. What he thought of the amateur radio industry and how big it was. And he came from a company called Fleur Daniels, and he was going to change everything at Icom America. So I'm young, full of myself. And I said, you're crazy. And I had an offer from a company called AEA, Advanced Electronic Applications. And they were in Linwood, Washington, fairly close, but they were known for their antenna design. And it's there that I got an interest in ham radio, because one of the owners was a guy named Dr. Al Chandler. I think I forgot his call sign, K6 RFK, something like that. And all that we know about antenna design and the E and the F layer is work that he did down in the Arctic or Antarctica. So he spent 5 years laying out a 10-mile or 5-mile hunk of wire and bouncing it off the ionosphere every night to see and map what radio waves did when it bounced off the ionosphere. And this was like in the 60s or 70s is when he did this.
Wow.
Anyway, so he's one of the owners there. And so they had antennas like the isopole, they had a half-wave antenna. And so because of that, I got interested in antennas and QRP. Wasn't so much interested in having, a gazillion watts. But what you could do with like low power and antenna design, that interested me. And he helped me along the way of that, talked to me about feed lines going up into, they did a product called an isopole, which has gone away. I was actually thinking about this morning before we got on here. That's a great product to remarket. It's like it's the one that had the cones on it. And it had 2 cones, and it was really unique in its design. And the reason that the cones were there was to get rid of the radiation that was coming back down through the feed line. So you'd get a better angle of radiation, right? And so they put there, and so the way that Dr. Al would teach about the cone is he would have a light bulb that he would run up and down the feed line. And when it would light up, you could see where the RF was coming back down the line. And because of that, your angle of radiation would change. It would be distorted. You'd want to get rid of that radiation coming back down the feed line. And that's what the cones were for. It was getting rid of the radiation of the feed line. And he was wonderful. And he taught me about so I think most people in amateur radio, actually I marketed to them. I got tired of trying to educate them on the difference between an 8-watt handheld and a 1-watt handheld really is that you just suck the juice out of the battery faster. The most important thing is the antenna. And so if you want to get distance, it has nothing to do with power. Gives you gain, not distance, right? Because it's VHF, it's UHF. So you will get gain. But because it's VHF and UHF, to the curvature of the Earth, you're not going to get more than 3 to 5 miles anyway. It's going to go off into space with a radiating element. So anyway, I did the marine as well as the amateur side. And I learned that a half-wave antenna is better than a 5/8 wave antenna, which most people would say a 5/8 antenna, I want the biggest and best I can get. Not the case, because a half-wave gets rid of the ground plane issue.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get a lot more distance with a half-wave antenna on a handheld. And they had a thing called a hot rod that they developed with a matching network at the base. It's gone away as well. It's an awesome antenna. I don't know if anybody's marketing it, but I used to sell it in the marine line, because if you're in trouble, you put that on your marine VHF handheld, and you'll get a lot more distance because you'll get more height. And it's a telescoping antenna, and you won't have to worry about any of your radiating energy going back down into your body, because it's a half-wave antenna. So I learned that through Dr. Al. I asked him a question: why is a half-wave better than a 5/8 wave? 2 hours later, I understood, with diagrams on the board. So anyway, that's how I kind of got into ham radio. And then I put up in my backyard, I couldn't put up a big antenna because of antenna covenants. So I got an antenna called a Butternut Vertical. I don't know if they're in business anymore. And a hand came over and showed me how to run ground lines for it, radiating ground lines. Did that. And then I had a 735, an Icom IC 735 that I had at the house, and would use that.
So, question for you: when you said how to run the ground, did you bury them underground, or did you just run them on top of the ground?
Right them on top of the ground, put stakes in, because I'd take the antenna down. I couldn't leave the antenna up.
Gotcha.
So I'd take it down. So we just ran them on the top, ran stakes down into the ground, metal rods with the radiating. We cut the So I forgot. I think we're at 40 meters, maybe. I forgot. It's been a long time. So I'm 63 now. I would have been 26, 27. So almost 40 years ago. But so he taught me how to cut the length of the radials to match the band I'm on. So we'd have a radiating element for my vertical. And that interested me in ham radio, and AEA was also into, I know you said you were into digital. When I went there, they had a thing called a PK232, which was packet radio and Amtor radio, that type of thing, digital radio. This is before the internet, right? So we had a bunch of ham radio operators that were in there that were also computer geeks. And they spent hours and hours and hours trying to get their buddy's computer to do something, right? So using TCP/IP, I mean, it was like they were excited if they got to put an A on the other guy's computer. It was like a big party when they did that. So you can probably relate to that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember. Well, gosh, we were dialing up with 300 baud modems and controlling somebody else's computer using Magic Soft BBS software. So
right.
Fun stuff back in the day. So, okay, a couple of things. You said it was Dr. Al, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Al, you said where you were, it was antenna design that really interests you. Is this when you were at Icom or before Icom?
Yeah, so I jumped way ahead. So in between. So I was with Icom from 1982 to 1997 with 2 years in between there. I think it was 88 to 90 at AEA. So they came back to me. The guy left that I had the disagreement with. He went back to Fuller Daniels or wherever he went. Great guy. We just didn't see eye to eye on that. The owner, Bob Brunkow, K7NHE, came back and ran Icom America and came and got me back from AEA. Came and got him Chris Luigi over to bring me back to Icom, where I became a director when I left. I was So by the way, everything that's been recorded here so far, it's recording. Are you cool with everything because I know exactly. Yeah. I know when we kind of just like went straight into it, and it's going to be great. I just want to make sure you're okay with everything that's been shared so far. We put in. Absolutely. So what I'd love to do is take you back just a little bit. It's interesting to me that you start working for Icom, an industry leader, obviously in amateur radio. And yet you have no interest in amateur radio or having a license at the time. How does that happen? So the time I am 20 years old, and I was working for my father. He was vice president of John Morrell Meat Company. And so I'm a 20-year-old, and he's like, Jim, he goes, you're not showing up for work on time. And, you really need to get out of the house and go find a living. So I got a hold of actually an employment agency in Bellevue, Washington to find a job. And so she sent me to what she thought was an oil refinery valve company, but it was the wrong company that she sent me to. And it was a company called Icom. And so I walked in, and there was a 70-year-old gentleman that was there, said they were looking for a warehouseman. No, they knew nothing about this employment agency thing, but come in, I want to interview you. So I interviewed him, and they showed me the job. My job would be to break cardboard down and go buy donuts for the people in the office with the money that I had for the cardboard. So I did, so I said, sure, I'll take the job. There were some struggles there with my age. And then as I grew older, the owner took an interest in me. And so this would have been about 1982, 1983. He came downstairs and he said, Jim, I used to have a Jeep, no top on the Jeep, big speakers in it, long hair. And he said, Jim, I need you to come with me. I got a haircut. He took me to Nordstrom's and he got me a suit. He said, we're going to stick you on the road, but you need to get your ham license and I'm going to teach you all about radio. And at the time, Icom only had, I think, 15 employees. They were really small. And they had just become, so Icom used to be a lot of little distributors. It wasn't Icom. There was so Bob's call sign was NHE. So it was NHE Communications. And there was another one called Aquarius Communications out of Dallas. There were lots of people bringing in this person's radio. His name was Inui. Mr. Chikozu Inui was the engineer that developed Icom radios. And he had developed the first solid state radio, no tubes. He was the first guy to do that. And so the ham radio operators in the United States that were entrepreneurial said, "Oh, this is an awesome product." Fast forward, it became so basically because he could only build so many radios. NHE Communications, Bob Brunkow, who had been with AT&T and developed what we know about break-even analysis in business, was also a ham. Bought everything that he could get his hands on, and the guy in Dallas, Aquarius Communications, bought everything he could. So there's two factions that were buying all the inventory, and that became Icom West and Icom East. Over a period of time, Mr. Inouye came over and said it's going to be Icom America, and picked Icom West to run the business. And I'm not sure of how Icom East dissolved, but it became Icom America, and we did have a Dallas office at the time. So I grew through that portion. I matured from 20. I'm 25, 26, and Bob's taken a real interest in me and sent me to the University of Washington for schooling. Bob
is the 70-year-old gentleman that hired you and interviewed
No,
you?
No. Yes, no. That was that was Barney.
Okay.
He was actually he was the head of the warehouse.
He was the head of the warehouse, but Bob is the one who said, "I want to take you to get a haircut. I want to get you a suit at Nordstrom's, and I'm going to put you on the road." Yep. Okay. Yeah, Bob Brunkow, K7NHE. Yeah, gotcha. And I think he started Icom America and ran Icom America for many years and just left not too long ago. And sent me to school, taught me, gave me responsibilities in regards to inventory, forecasting. But, really, the cool thing about it were the people that worked there were really, really good people in regards to engineering. So one thing that they taught me, and my boss at the time was a lady named, I'll inject another name, Evelyn Garrison. And she was the marketing manager for the amateur radio division. And she would not put you in the booth unless you completely knew the product. I mean, you had to be 30 minutes ahead of schedule when you showed up. You had to have a suit and tie on when you went to the booth. I mean, and so I would spend hours with people learning the product, learning all my products as a young person. And so because I was young, they would send me to all the trade shows. And Icom America at the time was involved in aviation, marine, amateur radio, and commercial two-way radio. And so I went to all of those trade shows. And the marketing managers for each one of those divisions was extremely talented. The marine guy, they were all into boating. Those guys, the aviation guy was Bob, he flew. So I got to learn to that. Actually, the story with Bob is he took me up in his airplane, threw me the aircraft, and he said, "Hey, get me back to the airport with this VOR on the handheld." That's how you have to know the product. So you have to use the product. So I was really lucky. I was fortunate to have walked into that door without those kinds of people that were in that building. And of course, they grew it to a substantial company. But the heart and soul of that company was the engineering, the customer support. They knew their product, and they had a niche. Whether it was marine aviation, amateur radio, they always had a certain niche to it. So I went to all the trade shows, and then it came time when I was a little older to become what they call the national sales manager. So they had each marketing manager had a national sales manager. And so Bob called me in his office and said, "Hey, so we've got 4 divisions, and which one do you want to go into?" And I said, "Marine." I'm going to the Marine division. I want to go hang out. And he goes, "Wrong answer." I go, "Aviation? No, that's not the wrong answer. You're going to the amateur division because Evelyn likes you," which wasn't my favorite. Definitely wasn't my favorite, but it was the largest one at Icom America at the time. So amateur radio was our number one thing. And so I became the national sales manager through different levels, assistant sales manager. But anyway, I became the national sales manager over a period of time at Icom. And this would have been up to the 90s. And then Evelyn left, and a guy named Chris Lucci came on, and he oversaw the different divisions, and he wanted to hand over the amateur side to me. So that's how I got. Yeah, that's kind of the story with Icom America. Yeah. That's so my story. I guess to answer your question, how I got there, serendipity, like you said, it's just strictly pure luck. I mean, there was nothing I had focused on Icom, and even when I went, Icom was a very small niche type company at the time. Drake was just going out of the business. Collins was just going out of the business. Kenwood was a big player, in that
Kenwood was going to be the monster to compete with. So I competed with Kenwood and Yaesu for many years. So that's how I got to Icom.
That's an amazing story. There's so many things that just are of fascination for me. I love the fact that you were sent by a job agency to go and get a job at this place, and they sent you to the wrong place. The 70-year-old guy has no idea who that
Right.
agency is, but I want to interview you. And just how that led, and then you've got this Bob who comes along and says, "Listen, I'm going to take you out, get a haircut. I'm going to help you mature. I'm going to put you in a suit. I'm going to set you down a professional path." You said, "I'm going to teach you radio." Now, did Bob act as what we today that I recognize as like an Elmer in helping you understand the background of radio and the aspects? Or it's just like, hey, I'm going to teach you what you need to know so that you can get a license, because you're not going to do this without a license. What was the level there? Because I heard earlier you said when I got there, I really wasn't interested in radio. But did you become interested at this point? Because it sounded to me like when you really got your interest was when you got into the antenna design, which actually came in that little gap space. So what I'd love to hear is at what level was your interest in the actual art and of radio and understanding of the technology of radio when you were getting that license, or was it just a means to the end of keeping this really nice job?
It was, at that point, it was a means to the end of keeping a really nice job. It really was. I was interested in regards to how it worked so that I could sell the product. And why it was, because I truly believe at this time, this is a young kid, I'm 27, 28. All I had my designs on that corner office, that marketing manager position, because I saw at the time, the material things they had were just awesome. And what a great job. So I had my focus on that. And one of the things I had to do was to have my ham radio license and to completely understand how it worked. Because as you know, when you're discussing things with amateur radio operators, they know if you're a fake or not, right? So you have to know what's going on. Now, later I became very interested in it. But before that, it really was, why was this radio awesome when I talked to a customer? And I'm fortunate because during my time there, we came out with the IC706 was just released. We were the first ones to do that. I was also, let me back up. There was an Elmer's. It was and Bill Everett, K7RIE out of Washington, he passed. But he would take an interest in me. He would love ham radio. And through him, I saw the passion in ham radio with him that he had. And he would bring me into the radio room we had there and show me the different radios. And he helped design a radio called a 781, which I think at the time at Icom changed Icom's perception, people's perception of Icom in regards to high-end HF transceivers. So with your question, I was interested. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like my total passion was ham radio. It was also selfish regards to like, I need to learn this so that I can have a living. But there was also interest in the design of the engineering electronics of what was happening. And so Bill opened my eyes to a company called Signal One. And they're a high-end company that was based out of Phoenix that had the ability to do a dual receiver capability with 2 tuning knobs on the transceiver. And at the time, they were also looking at a CRT that would show you activity on the band. And so the 781 was the first one to do that. And my job was to take that 781 to every DX club and to let them play around with it. Because at the time, we truly believed that to capture the low-end market from Yaesu and Kenwood, we had to be the number one radio. So if we have the status of having the best radio on the market, the rest would follow, right? So like if you had a low-tiered Icom, we had the 781 in the line. So you still had a quality product. And so, I would go around and show that. At the time, Kenwood was a huge player and had the top of the line stuff. And Yaesu had a guy named Chip Margelli who just passed us recently, who was a famous DXer. And he had an FT1000, I think was his transceiver. And he would talk to me about his transceiver, and he would say, I I would talk to him about the ability to have two receivers and why you would want that. And Chip showed me, well, because you could do CW on both bands. Chip was just the most talented human being in the world. He actually went on the Tonight Show to compete with, to show how fast he could do CW. Just an incredible guy. And he could listen to one channel, be carrying a conversation, and then have two channels at the same time. Just an incredible guy. And he was the marketing manager at Yaesu. Anyway, so I went around and I brought the 781 to all the places. And through that, I learned a lot about amateur radio and the sophistication of the antennas, and what at the time there was remote operation going on because they wanted to put giant antennas up, but they didn't have the space, so they would remotely control that station. And that just incredible stuff that was going on. So not just amateur radio, but just the things that were going on at that time. Of course, this was pre-internet, packet and all of that stuff. So no, I think the passion for amateur radio did come when I was with AEA because of the people I was there. And I got down into the nuts and bolts of really amateur radio. You got a transmitter and an antenna. That's kind of as basic as you get. And you start learning about antenna design and resonant frequencies and ground planes and radiation patterns and things like that. It interested me. So yeah, that's when I did get interested in amateur radio when I was there. And then when I went back, I was so, at the time Icom was growing crazy. I had little ones and I would there was no time for amateur radio to practice it. I would go to a trade show in Miami and be expected to be back on Monday morning, after they're turning down Sunday night at 7:00 for a debriefing meeting on Monday. So, it was long hours there. And so there wasn't any really time for that. One thing I did work on, I'll inject here. I think it's kind of cool thing I'll tell you how it happened. So I was in Bellevue, Washington. I got a call from a guy named Danny Eskenazi, K7SS, he was out of Seattle. And he goes, Jim, I want you to come over and have lunch with me. I had no idea who this guy was, but we had a mutual friend. And he was part of the DX club up in Seattle. And so I went in to see him. And he was also a contester, which I don't get, but he was a contester. So I went in, met him in Seattle. He had a business called Dreamland where he sold vintage watches and stuff. And he goes, I have an idea. He goes, I know all these ham radio operators. And what we should do is put together a national contest. And you should have it in Bellevue, Washington. You should host this thing because we have the Goodwill Games coming into Seattle. And I went, wow. So that's a great idea. And so we did. We created the first radio contest, W something RTC, World Radio Team Championship was, I was involved in that. And we created that from Danny's idea. And so we brought amateur radio operators from all over the world into Bellevue and set them up with equal stations throughout the world. And they had a contest. We had a dinner and I met all of these people. And it was awesome, to meet them and to understand contesting, that's a whole different world. Versus DXing, which is totally different than contesting, really. So, yeah, I think I did get a passion for it at that point. I did, but I didn't have time to do it. So, yeah, at that time, I had the best equipment you could get. I had a 4KL 781, which was the first one to automatically track as you went from band to band. It would tune. It was awesome, right? So, we used to call it. You could. It wasn't the amount of watts; it was the quality of watts. Because you couldn't spend any more money than if you got a 781 and a 4KL, you were out about $12,000, which at the time was. So this would have been 1989, 1990. It was a substantial amount of money. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that was really cool. I guess that's a long answer to your question. Throughout that time, I did have a passion for amateur radio, and the people that were involved in it was really cool.
Yeah. So one clarification, I just want to make sure I'm tracking everything because this is a fascinating story. When you say we were involved and we launched that first contest, this is when you're back at Icom after working with Dr. Al, correct?
Yeah. It was right before I left, actually. Right before I left the following year to go to AEA when a guy named Bill Cadle came on and ran Icom America. From Fleur Daniels. Bob wanted to take a sabbatical. So it was right before we had our disagreement. He just thought the industry was much larger than it was. I said, I can't get that number. So Right before that, though, I had Danny had contacted me. My boss at the time was Evelyn Garrison. And so I talked to her about the idea. She wasn't too keen on it until we met with Danny in the group. And then she really pushed it forward, and she got the resources to do it at Icom. I was just a kid at the time. I was a assistant sales manager at the time. And that I had great relationships with my dealers that I had, and I had relationships with different people in the amateur community. So I would bring this information to her, and then she would get the resources to really push it. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners know Evelyn Garrison with Icom America, she put Icom on the map, really. She was an incredible woman. And anyway, yeah, WRTC, that was the first one. It was like 1990. I think I still have the T-shirt from that.
So this contest is right before you left Icom, before
Correct.
going to meet with Dr. Al, correct?
Yeah, at AEA, company called Advanced Electronic Applications. Yeah, AEA.
Okay. So it's clear there was a disagreement with some new leadership and how the things were. You left Icom to go work with ADA, right?
AEA, Alpha Echo Alpha.
Thank you, AEA.
Yeah.
And so now you go here and you're working with Dr. Al, and it sounded to me, just from the energy that I picked up from you, like there was a development of a deeper passion, especially when it came to antenna design. So it sounds to me like right before that, you had access to the most amazing equipment. A passion by this time has developed. When you leave Icom and you're working for AEA, do you get to dive more into that passion and take what you're learning about antenna design? And by the way, do you still have access to some of this amazing gear? Tell me a little bit about that season right there.
Yeah, no, I didn't. So when I left Icom, I had no longer have access to their gear. But at AEA, Mike Lamb was the owner of AEA at the time. And we had radios there, but I had never, so we would take them out and since we were focused on antennas, selling antennas and antenna design and packet, I actually practiced putting up antennas so at Icom, that's a marketing arm, really. You do have some engineering, but really it's a marketing arm. We make some changes to things and we send it over to the factory, Icom America, Icom Japan. They make changes in the back. AEA was an American company. So I'm sitting there with an engineer and we're actually trying this stuff. Does it work? Which is really cool. So you do get an interest at that time. So when you get an antenna design, and also we came out with a thing called an isoloop antenna at the time. I think MFJ did run with that for a while. But an isoloop antenna, we had that. So I got to play around with a loop antenna design and what did it do? Did it work? So I would have access to that. And we had radios there. So I would just I would see how they worked. I would take and we created an antenna analyzer when we were there. So I guess the answer to your question is that's when because I was working with the engineer and I was there with them when we would go out in the field, slap an antenna up and see how it worked. And if we wanted to go after that market, it was really cool to see the SWR change, the radiation angle change on antennas, the gain change on the other end. You could hear it, tuning a loop antenna with you've got moving capacitors in that antenna as it moves and you get to resonance, you can hear it. You can hear the signal pick up. Really cool. Very cool stuff. And then so I would see how they would make the changes in the circuit to make it better. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. I think because I'm there with the engineer, whereas Icom is more, here's your box, go sell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do have some input, but basically they don't want to hear anything. They don't want you to sell those boxes so the factory can keep making them. Whereas AEA was more about, you're dealing with an engineer right there. Same issue, they have to build it and sell it, but you're sitting there with the engineer and that was really cool. So you understand it. And I think, I was also very fortunate because the people at Icom were very talented and AEA were the best in the world at what they did, really high-end companies, not mass market companies. So I was very, very fortunate to that. So the answer to your question, yeah, that's where I got into amateur radio more.
I love it.
There, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So it sounds like you enjoyed all of the aspects of testing and seeing the changes, working with the engineers, seeing how technically it's improving. You're bringing something excellent to market. You mentioned the fact that there's a difference between DXing and then contesting is a whole separate thing from DXing. Did you ever I heard you say earlier, I had access to all this stuff. I had developed a passion, but I don't have time to play with it,
Right.
At any point when you were with AEA, did you have more time to play with it? And either way, if you didn't and you wanted to, or you did and you did, what did you or would you have wanted to do more of with the art and or hobby of radio outside of work? Are at that time with the passion? Are you a DXer, or what is it about amateur radio, or is it just like I like fiddling with this stuff and seeing what I can do?
I'm a fiddler. I am a fiddler. I think QRP interests me because just antenna design. I just think that's really cool to take a hunk of wire out, put it out there, and you can talk to somebody, right? And then, so by doing small changes to an antenna with 5 watts at the base, you can really see what happens, right? Like you can, the changes you make to the antenna design or the resonant circuit in your transceiver, you can see it, you can hear it. Whereas if you have like a giant, amplifier and a HF transceiver, that's not, I don't get that, but that's me. So I think that interests me more of the design, because when you change a circuit or you tune a circuit better, use higher quality components, a better feed line, whatever it is, you can hear it and you can play around with it. To me, that's amateur radio, right? Like, so I can go out and I can play around with, test different circuits on what I'm trying to do. And I mean, how cool is it? You put a wire up and who knows the mystery of that? I mean, who's out there, right? So you put the thing up there, you kind of listen. If I have a giant antenna, it's just a lot of noise to me. And, I'm not into that. I think that the magic of radio to me was just to put a wire out, tune it and play around with it and see the differences that happened and the people that would come in. And what happens with the band conditions also interests me, the different, sunspot cycles. And, I think it goes way back. Even when I had not quite started working at Icom. I'm going off the rails here, but I was 17, 18, and my parents moving from San Francisco up to Washington State. And I worked at a restaurant called Herfy's, and at night I could hear KFRC out of San Francisco up in Washington. I mean, how weird is that, right? So that's when my first thing of radio, how does that happen? That, skip and all that stuff on AM at night was really interesting. So that's always interested me. I mean, how that happens. And then so as you get into, I hear somebody's paying me to figure that out, right? So Icom paid me to go figure that out, exactly how that happens and what's the best way we can do to maximize that, whatever's happening in that. So yeah, my interest is probably more QRP antenna design. I think that's just awesome, because that's what I like.
I love that. I just want to, like, on my own personal journey here. So got a question for you. What, I know QRP stands for low power operation. So what in your mind qualifies for QRP? Because in my mind, I'm thinking people who are operating, 5 watts, maybe even less, because I've seen a lot of people out there. However, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that there's a huge movement of people who have the Zygu G90s. I happen to be one of them. I just purchased one, and it operates at 20 watts. And so my first HF rigs, I got an Icom 7300. I don't think I've ever operated this thing under 100 watts yet. I've got
nice radio. Yeah.
Thank you. I got an FT891 in my car, another FT891 in a Go box, just because I didn't want to take it out of my car and put it in the car. So I have 2 of those. Neither of those have ever been operated at less than 100 watts. But then I just purchased a Zygu G90, and I'm nervous. Is this thing going to work? And of course, I know that it does work because I've seen the YouTube video. So I go out there and I'm playing with this thing, and I'm getting almost nothing. It's like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden I get my first contact with it, and I'm like, and I get a 5.4 report, and I'm like, so I'm not getting the strongest signal report. But eventually I get my first 5.9, 5.9. Oh man, you're 10.0. It's like, wow, I'm getting some great reports at hundreds of miles away. And then I get I'm literally talking, I'm in northern Kentucky, by the way, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I get a very strong 5.7 signal to a guy in San Diego, California. And he reads me a strong 5.7 as well. He just so happens to be operating a Zygu G90 at 20 watts as well.
Cool.
And then talk about serendipity. My very it's like all of a sudden now it's like, okay, I have no buyer's remorse about buying a 20-watt radio. And then my very next contact, I mean, right after the San Diego guy, I'm talking to a guy in St. Martin down in the Caribbean, and he is also on a Zygu G90 operating 20 watts, and we are talking to each other clear as day. So my question for you, I'm operating at the highest power of my Zygu G90 at 20 watts. Was I operating QRP?
I don't. So here's my view of it. I don't label anything. I really don't. So so I've dealt with all kinds when I was with Icom. So there was that's not QRP. To me, I like the science of radio, right? Whether it's 100 watts, 20 watts, I really don't care. I'm not into contesting. I'm not into any of that stuff. I'm into what goes on, the physics of it. I really interests me. So if you're taking 20 watts, whether it's 5 watts or 20 watts, from what I understand, it's not about the power output on that. It really is about the propagation and what's going on there. That, like the E layer and the F layer, and what's happening, it interests me. Like, so, ionization during certain times of the day, the physics of it interests me, not the law of it. Like, I don't care about QRP. Well, you were actually running 8 watts. So what? I really want to know when I put the signal up there, what happens? What exactly happens when what does it do? And so no, I really don't think there's a difference between 20 watts and 5 watts. And there's people that are contests, that and I dealt with them. I worked with them, and most of those people you'll find are all about antenna design. Really, they're really heavily into antenna design and that side of the hobby. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah. To me, my personal preference, I don't care. But you are going to run into so you've got a whole group of QRP. There's a QRP group. The answer is no.
Yeah,
it's 5 watts and less, right?
I love it.
No.
I'm having fun, and for me is I'm like pedal to the metal, and of course I don't know what I don't know yet. I'm just learning. I tell people all the time, I got 100% on my technician. 1 month later, I took my general. I got 100%. I knew 10% of the concepts that I studied in past. And it's like all I did was I memorized answers to a question poll. Now I'm actually learning. And so I will say that I am going in and I am enjoying I've probably watched 1,000 hours worth of antenna theory since then. So I am getting into it, and I appreciate your thing. Okay. So now you're with AEA. Were you working mostly for marketing for them? Is that what they hired you to do there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a sales guy. I'm a marketer. They put me in a booth and I sell stuff, right? So I've had a good track record of that where, I've always met my quota. I've always been fortunate. I've always sold high-end products. I never sell junk. I just don't do it. I competed against it and I get it. But working with Icom, it was always about quality. So the companies I worked with were always about high-end. I always wanted to work high-end products. And I was in sales, always in sales and marketing. So
you work with AEA for a few years, and then I heard you say that Icom brought you back. They enticed you to come back. And what was it that enticed you to come back? How long did you stay? And what did you do then that you weren't doing before?
So when I left, Evelyn Garrison was my boss. So she was the marketing manager. I was the national sales manager. And so the company was going through turmoil there. Not turmoil is the wrong word. They were going through growth. And so they had a vision for this growth that I didn't agree with. I didn't see it. I don't want to be the wet blanket, but I just didn't see that growth in amateur radio. I didn't. I saw it in other divisions. And then Evelyn was retiring. And so the natural progression was I would take her position to be the marketing manager. And Bob, the owner, I guess at the time, I knew he was Anui Communications. Anyway, that's not important, but came to me and they were bringing this Bill Cato on, and he told me this number he wanted to get. I said, I'm not your guy. I can't do that. So I left at that point and went to AEA, and Bill Cato left. He left. I don't want to say the number wasn't there. He didn't have planned, or he couldn't get it to where he wanted it to go. It was just a mutual separation. But they were on great terms. He just left. It just wasn't going to work. Wrong guy for the wrong company. Icom America at the time was a very small engineering driven company. It wasn't a marketing driven company. It was all about quality products, in whatever division, marine, aviation, whatever they were in. So then they came to me and asked me to come back. And of course I loved the company, and Bill was gone, and the owner was Bob Brunkow was there again. And he brought a new guy on, Chris Lucci, was an incredibly talented guy. And he had spent time with IBM and different companies. He brought a background that I didn't have exposure to. So I came back. This would have been like 1991, something like that. So I came back, and then the things I learned at AEA in regards to ham radio really, really helped, I think. And we're a small company. So I guess the answer to the question is I came back and I learned, I'd learned a lot in regards to marketing, because at Icom, they would show me a box, I would bring it out to the ham shows, and I would sell it. At AEA, actually used it, right? So I knew how it worked. It changed, a light switch. So I would take the radio out, and I would take it out to the park, and I would try it on antennas, and I would see, talk to me about. At the time, DSP was just coming on, right? So we didn't have digital signal processing, and if you did, it was just in the audio level. So I got to learn all of those things. So I went back to Icom, and I guess that's to answer your question. So I went back to Icom, and the guy I had left, he went back to, I forgot where he went. He's still a friend of mine, great guy. Bill Cato was his name. And he went off to some giant company again, and Bob came back for Icom America. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so you were there the second round for how long before you started your own company? Did you go straight from Icon to launching Lido Radio?
Yeah. So I was there till 1997. So I went from 91 to 1997 is when I left. And do you want that story?
Absolutely.
Story.
Yeah, that's
an interesting story.
Well, by the way, before you go there, I just want to say this. I'm, as you know, I've said several times, relatively brand new to amateur radio, just licensed for the first time in August. And within a week of getting my amateur radio license, Lido Radio Products was on my radar. It's just like, I'm like, I am absolutely in dire need for a way to put this in my car without drilling holes. I'm not kidding you. It's like, I do not want to drill holes into my brand new car that I've spent this much money on, but I definitely want to have my radio here, and I want it in front of me. And it's like, where do I go? And just a quick search within minutes, I'm confronted with the only real option that has a solution for my exact need, and it was Lido Radio Products.
Let's talk about that. That's the most important thing, or the most interesting thing, I think. So it goes back to so when we came out with the Icom IC706, I don't know if you wouldn't know that we were the first ones to have a small control head radio. Icom America was. It put us on the. I mean, we we became the number one amateur radio manufacturer with the 706, which later became the 7000. And
by the way, my first experience of an HF radio and actually operating one was a friend of mine who said, "Hey, Cliff, do you want to come out and see a Parks on the Air? I'm going to do it." And he was using an Icom 7000, and I'm like, I love that radio.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. So 706 was the predecessor to the 7000. So
my understanding is the 706, if it was the predecessor, it actually was an all band. So it actually had HF and also 70 centimeter and 2 meters. Is that correct?
Yeah, it had, yes.
But the 7,000, maybe the 7,000 had it as well. I know the 7,100 or the 7,200, the one with the angled screen.
Yeah,
that one
I see 7,100.
Yeah, somewhere along the lines they got rid of the. Actually, no, I think even that one is an all band.
Yeah,
it is. No, it's my Yaesu 891 that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it had two. I remember it had 2 meters in it, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
So you had the time we came out with it was revolutionary. It was the coolest radio, and I looked like a cell star, but it really had nothing to do with me. It was just an awesome product. So anyway, how I got into how I did Lido was I'm at a trade show with the guy with the 706, and I'm showing him this control head. I go, "Isn't that freaking awesome?" And he goes, I go, "Yeah." And you just take this metal plate, and it's got a quarter 20. He goes, "Okay, so how do I put it in my car?" I go, "You just drill a couple holes in your car." He goes, No. I got a Mercedes. I'm not putting it. No, I go, "Well, Velcro. How about Velcro?" So that's stuck in my head, So I'm going, "Yeah, well, we need to come up with a way to put this thing in the car." And what was interesting at Icom is Icom's extremely good at radios, horrible at accessories, just horrible. Okay, even today, they're horrible at accessories. Right now, they'll give you a suction cup for their control head. That's it. Right? They haven't even thought about all of the different options that are available. So I was there. Let me intertwine one other story. So the company sent me down to. I was going to become a director at director. I'm not sure what the title was going to be, but I was to go down to start. This is all going to tie together, so bear with me. So anyway, keep that in mind. Like the 706, a guy came to me at a trade show and goes, "Hey, how am I going to mount this in my Mercedes?" I'm like, "I have Velcro. I don't want to put that sticky stuff in my car." Move forward, it stuck in my head. So the company said, "We want you to go down to, we have an idea." So right now at Bellevue, Washington, what we have is 4 different national sales managers. They're all out of Bellevue, Washington. A lot of you have lap over dealers, and you're all like running around the country, and we're paying all this money in travel expenses. So what we want to do is we want to do regional managers. And so you'd have a regional manager in each part of the United States. That way we cut down on our travel. You'd have a more intimate relationship with the dealers in that territory, and you would know more about the territory, other than you sitting in Bellevue, Washington, and covering the entire territory. So what you're going to do is you're going to cover all of the industries we're in for that territory. So you're going to be amateur, marine, land mobile, aviation for that territory. And Jim, since you're the only amateur guy, you're going first, and you're going to California, and you're going to have California, Arizona, Nevada. I think that was it. That was it. And you're going to go down. We're going to send you down to Newport Beach, California area, and you're going to go around and see all these dealers. And you're going to set this program up, and then in 3 years, you're coming back, and you're going to be whatever title it was. So, and this was Bob sent me down there. So I did. So I left, and I got to know all of these people, and all the marketing of for all of those programs. And then they said at the end of 3 years, it's time for you to come back. And I had met my wife down in California when we were dating, and I said, I can't. She's from California. I can't bring her to Washington State. There's no way she survived. She's an attorney, and she couldn't practice law in the state of Washington, and she would. She's from California, man. She's from Southern California. I can't bring her to Washington State. It won't last long. And he goes, "I knew it was going to be a girl, man. I knew it was going to be a girl." So anyway, so I stayed in California, and but I got to know a company called. So I kind of made a living down here selling stuff, but I always had in my mind the mounting solution, the no holes mounting solution for different products. And there was a company called Profit International out of Minnesota that I saw that had a 3M sticky pad that was really cool. And so I started looking at that, and that really, they had some really good ideas. And that's where I got the idea of having, different types of solutions for a radio that you could put in your car without drilling a hole. And that goes back to, it just really goes back to that guy that had the 706 and said, hey, I don't want to put this in my Mercedes this way. And so through that, we learned about some real high-end 3M VHB adhesives that we could use for installation and different types of installation into a vehicle. Does that answer your question? Is that kind of,
that's exactly it. So, so basically, the answer to the question, well, first of all, just a reminder of the question is okay, how did you go from you're back at Icom and ultimately start this company called Lido Radio? So I love the story of the guy who it's like, this isn't your average guy off-roading in a Jeep, or it's not your average, amateur radio enthusiast who's wanting to put this in his pickup truck or his SUV or anything. Hey, I'd like to put this in my really nice car, but I'm not drilling holes for it. So I love that story. I also love the story that you meeting your wife is probably one of the instigators for the start of this company as well, and trying to figure out something. And I also love the solution to a real problem. I'm a mindset and business strategy coach. And so one of the things I help people do is support their entrepreneurial journey. And so many people say, you know what, I just want to go create a business and make lots of money, and hopefully I'll become a thought leader. But they're creating all sorts of products and trying to find an audience who, that will want it. They're trying to create a need for a product that they've created. Whereas it's very clear one of the reasons why you've succeeded in the way that you have is because you actually saw and felt need that was absolutely there for a large number of people, and you created a company to fill the need. That's the part of your story that I'm really resonating with, and also just the moving to California, finding your wife. I'm loving the whole thing. So how did you make the exit from Icom and start into Lido Radio?
Oh, wow. That was a sad day. So the time had come for Bob, who's like a father figure almost to me, and he wanted me to come back to Bellevue, Washington. And I couldn't do that because my wife, I just can't see how I could bring her up. And we were dating at the time. She's from Southern California. And so the job I would have at Icom would be as whatever you want to call it. Basically, I'm a marketing guy. And at Icom, you travel a lot. So I'm going to take this girl, right? I'm going to take her out of Southern California. I'm going to set her down in Bellevue, Washington. Beautiful place. Don't get me wrong. But it rains all the time.
Yeah,
right?
not enough sun for a Southern California girl.
And I'm going to travel 80% of the time. Exactly how long do you think that would last?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, right? So I remember talking to him about that. And I said, I actually, they were such a great company to me. So we had that conversation about me coming back. It was time for me to come back after 3 years. And so I went back up and had decided that I just can't do that. And they were so nice. They actually had a place for me and I had gone through divorce, but they had a place for me and my children to stay in Bellevue. They had an apartment the company owned, and they put me up when I would come up there for meetings, and had it furnished, and my kids could come over. They're a wonderful company. And so I remember going up, taking all my consignment equipment. I put it in the apartment, and I called Bob, and I told him the situation, and he goes, "It's a girl. It's a girl, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a girl." He goes, "I knew it, man. I knew he shouldn't have sent you down there." So I go, "All your stuff's in the apartment. All my consignment stuff's in the apartment." And so then we just parted ways. It was really hard, still, because he's still close to me. I think he's in Alaska or Bellingham now. He goes back and forth up there. But they taught me so much about business and getting along, but I just couldn't bring my wife to Bellevue, Washington. I mean, it's beautiful there, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So so I brought all my stuff up, and that's kind of it.
So you leave Icom, you're staying in Southern California, and you now don't have a income coming in. And do you start Lido Radio right away?
On the side, yeah. Of course, I needed to make a living, so I could sell radios. So I started with a company called Bear Communications. They do two-way radios, commercial two-way radios. And I had a relationship with them through Icom. They were one of our dealers. So I worked with them, and I started a rep company as well. I think, yeah. Wait a minute, I started the rep company first, and sold some things through the aviation business. Actually, man, this is going way back. I sold my friend Harold Christensen, who was at Icom America at the time. He worked with me or for me in my division, and he had gone to Yaesu and was launching their aviation line. So I took that on I helped him market that, and I had some other things, Skyox Oxygen. I had some stuff in the aviation business just to kind of figure out what I was going to do with my life. I became a rep, right? So I did that, but and at the time, so I always thought, the one thing that everybody's missing are mounting solutions. This is really weird why I even thought about that. The one thing is, like, every time I ran into somebody with a radio, it was like, how am I going to mount this in my vehicle? Every question was every person that I talked to, how am I going to put this in my vehicle? And what was interesting, I ran across different companies that had different mounting solutions. And then so if they didn't have it, I learned about manufacturing. So I learned that I could actually go to different manufacturers and have it made, and some in the United States, some in Taiwan, and this solved this problem. And so that's kind of how I started Lido. But it was a period of time, and Lido was a part-time thing for a while. It was a part-time thing, but anyway, I think that's the answer to the question. That's kind of how I well, I just want to point out, I actually have a main podcast. It's called the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. I'm thinking, as we've been going through this entire, I'm having a dialogue with myself. This is an incredibly awesome episode about the entrepreneurial journey, about how you develop marketing skills and just how we get into the things that we do in life, and how we get introduced to passions, and how that leads to one thing leads to another. There's no doubt in my mind this is going into two different podcasts. So now what I love about this is the key concept that I work with a lot of people is the fact that you may have this dream of launching a business, like for you, a product-based business on how to do a no-hole installation of radio products in your car. And so many people go out there and it's like, listen, I'm just going to go and do this, and I'm going to make it happen. Whereas the smart thing may be to take care of your immediate income needs first, so that you're not so desperate to make sales. So you're not so you put yourself in a very tight situation that brings a lot of overwhelming anxiety and stuff like that. So that's another thing that I really appreciate about your journey is, like, it was a side thing for you for a while, and you went and did these things. And I love the fact that you took your relationships with a dealer and with the friend at Yaesu, and you use those opportunities and the skills that you've developed and just brought that over to, it's like, hey, I can be of value here with what I know and what experience I have, and you tapped into the relationship. So I love all that. When did Lido finally, when was it time to go full-time with Lido? Or is it, because I know it started in 2004, so I don't know much about the Lido story, so I'm interested in that part of it. We needed to increase our sales, so there's another part that you don't know about. So we went full time in 2016 is when it became successful. Lido was really a successful company. I
just want to just point out, I've read that Lido Radio products started in 2004.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying from 2004, and it wasn't until 2016 that you went full time.
That's right.
Wow.
That's
okay,
right.
I love that. Okay.
So I worked with a company down here called Prime Radio Products, and they sold they sell speaker microphones and audio products. They not so much in the amateur side, but more the commercial side. Where I've been very fortunate. So I was I repped for a while for different companies. Then a company called Prime offered me a position with their company to be as their marketing manager, and they did speaker microphones and audio accessories when they were just starting out. So aftermarket speaker microphones and accessories were just starting to come into the marketplace. Not so much in amateur radio, but more of a commercial radio. It's like a Motorola speaker microphone or different audio products for those commercial sides. So I spent some time as their director of marketing with a company called Prime Radio Products. Now they do have some ham exposure, but not a lot. And they were okay with me having my dream of having my own business. A guy named Dave George, great guy. He's there now. He's their president of the company. And as Lido became more and more big, he just asked me to come in every once in a while for more of a consultation type thing, right? It was more, he'd come in, show me the issue, and then so finally I said, Dave, I need to go do this. This is what I need to do, and he was very cool with it. So let's see, to answer your question, yeah, from I would say 2000 when I left Icom in '97. So there was repping, just kind of like trying to make a living with my wife that I just met. We got married in 2000. Kind of a journey with selling two-way radio accessories, different things like that, and two-way radios for in commercial in like Bearcom. I had some very large sales with Bearcom that were pretty sophisticated. I did California Steel down here. But I always, in the back of my head, how are we going to mount this into this vehicle without drilling holes into it? I even ran into that with a California Steel, where you have the executives. They wanted a Motorola radio in their car, but they didn't want to drill it into their Mercedes. How are they going to put that into their car? So that was always. And then I ran into a company called Profit and several other companies that were doing adhesives and different types of mounting solutions that were substantial, that could hold a radio, kind of through that whole journey, and started to market those to ham radio outlet and some of the ham radio guys that were on that side, and they loved it. And it started to take off in the ham radio side. Where we really started to get some momentum was when we started going to the commercial side, and we came out with the real exciting forklift mount. So, we came up with forklift mounts for different radios that are out there, and that's become a really, really good thing for my company. So I guess to answer your questions, I worked part-time at Lido for a long time. So I would work as the director of marketing for Prime, and then at night I would actually ship out of my garage here. But I had the dream of having my own business. I wanted my own thing, although I love Dave George. He's the best guy in the world. But I wanted my own business. So.
Well, how did you come up with the idea of unscrewing the bolt on a car seat and putting that thing underneath there and having that arm? Where did you see that somewhere? And I could do something with that.
Yeah, I was at a trade show, and there was a guy that had not the version we have. It was really kind of Mickey Mouse, but then a light went on, and I went, we can make that better, So we got together with a company that manufactures that had. We wanted to make it out of aluminum rod. The first one we made was out of aluminum rod. So we got together with a manufacturer down here, and we had them cut an aluminum rod, put some ends on it, and to see what would happen. And it worked okay. I mean, we still sell it. It's called an LM300. We sell a lot of those. But there's fun stuff. But people are putting a lot of stuff. Well, hams, right? So they put too much on it. So it's designed for a control head for a radio. I would see them at a ham fest when we were selling this stuff. There'd be a control head, a couple handheld speaker, everything hung off of this thing that's made for 6 ounces of weight. And so then we made our more substantial seat bolt mount out of tubing and all that. We started to manufacture that stuff. That's kind of how we got into that. The issue with that seat bolt mount is, unfortunately, there's no two cars that are alike, and we're still struggling with how to make that where it's more universal, for our customer base. I don't have an answer to that on exactly, because we don't have a direct pipeline to the manufacturer, and some of them are taking a bolt out. They're just not even a bolt there anymore. So for the seat bolt. So yeah, I guess that's the answer to your question. We there was a really strange design I ran into at some trade show. It was not good, and but I like the idea where you could put a bracket under a bolt and bring it up. We always look at things that are you don't have to drill a hole in the car. And there's a really now this has nothing to do with my company, and I don't actually. I think they're wonderful. They actually approached us to buy my company, and it's a company that it's called ProClip, and they make some really cool stuff that clips into the dashboard, into the seams of the dashboard, and it's a Dutch company, I think, and really cool stuff. And that interests me. I think that if we ever struck that, we would be good partners together, because I know my market's really small or compared to them. They're after the cell phone market, but their stuff works really well. It goes into seams of products, and we make attachments that go on it. So basically, they take a product, fits into the seam of the vehicle, clips in without any holes, and leaves you a 4-hole amps pattern, which is a standard in our industry. I don't know if you know what that is. An amps is a standard 4-hole pattern, right? And so they give us that, and we can put our brackets onto that, and it works really well for lighter duty things.
I'm only familiar with it because I've educated myself on your products, not just for this interview, but just even when I'm thinking about making a purchase. I watched a lot of your videos demonstrating products and stuff. What my first Lido product was for the FTM 500D radio Yaesu control head. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting the one that screws onto the air conditioner vent, which my wife hated because I put it on her air conditioner vent on her side of the car, and she's like, number one, why are you putting an ugly radio in the car? And number two, right. I can't turn my thing there. So I said it's just temporary. Eventually, I'm going to put more radios in the car, and I'm going to get that thing off of there. But anyways, but that was my first product, and boy, I tell you, it worked perfect. I mean, it just absolutely was rock solid. It was right at the eye level where I wanted it to be. It's like, I really love this. Then I got my general license. Then I got my Yaesu 891, and I'm like, okay, now I want both here. Yeah. So I ended up getting it. I sent you a picture of it. Yeah. And so I got the cup holder with the little arm, and then it's got your, I think, 3 brackets all put together. So one is vertical, 2 horizontal, and the idea, actually no, it's 2. So one's horizontal. No, it is 3. It's horizontal or one's vertical and 2 horizontal. Something like that. Anyway, I put both my 891 and my Yaesu 500D radio heads on there, and then I have the 2 mic clips. But I actually switched it upside down, and I put the part with the mic clips at the top instead of the bottom. So this wasn't in the picture that I shared with you. And I went and got one of those 4-hole things from Ram Mount, and I got a Ram Mount extension arm, and I got a magnetic holder for my iPhone. And so now I also have that in between my 2 mics. And so I'm at the place now where the cup holder is probably just beyond the threshold of how much weight should be there. And so I'm thinking about getting the floor bolt mount now.
Yeah, they work great. So like, I think, the more weight you add to these things, the more vibration you're going to get. So you have to know that. Man, if you can tie it to the console somehow. We've got our LMAX, which works really good. And we've actually kind of changed the upper portion of the design on it to actually have a metal 4-hole amps instead of the design on the end of it. We've been working with that, and it's pretty good. It's pretty simple, but you're still going to get some movement, out of that product. It's working. I will tell you that
my next road trip of a couple 100 miles will tell me, but it's doing incredibly well. I know for a fact that I'm overloading it for what it's designed for. I put the heavy the metal RAM mount extension arm on there. I've got another iPhone 16 Pro on top of it. It's like I know.
Yeah, you're a ham, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, but it's got a great fit. And it's inside of a Honda Accord Sport, and it's like, it's beautiful. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate your products and the fact that I have my radios in my car. I can operate while I'm driving on a road trip on 2 meter, 70 centimeter. I'm absolutely obsessed with parks on the air. And so I drive into a park and I just tune my ATOS antenna and I'm literally there. Just 2 weeks ago, I activated 9 parks in one day.
Wow.
And I credit your product for making that as pleasurable
that's cool.
as it is.
Well, that's great.
That's
great. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's really cool.
So, Jim, thank you for so much for coming and sharing your story. I think this is incredibly valuable for 2 different podcasts, 2 different audiences. One, the entrepreneurial journey. I love your story of how you went from a 20-year-old dad's like, listen, you need some responsibility and you need to kind of mature a little bit. And I think the best place is for you to go find a way to make it on your own. I love the story of how you went all the way through. From the amateur radio side, there's so many things, just the inside story of an understanding of how Icom came about, Icom USA, or Icom America, I should say, and just your story throughout it. It's like fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time here.
My pleasure.
And I want to say something else to let you know. Like I said, your products immediately came up. So whatever you're doing in the marketing side, it's working. The fact that you're in Amazon definitely helped. So just know that your products and having presence inside of Amazon certainly was an instant thing. It's like, I need a mounting solution for this. And I'm like, Lido Radio, Lido products.
Isn't that, I got to tell you a story about that. I don't have time.
Go ahead. I have as much time as you have.
I got a call from Amazon. Amazon contacted me. I have done nothing with Amazon. I mean, I haven't contacted them. For some reason, they took an interest in Lido Radio products. And I don't pay a dime for search. They don't search it. And they have if you go to my site that says there's a banner they put up, they paid for it, they made it. And I have no idea other than we're probably a niche market that they're interested in. Maybe there's a ham somewhere on Amazon. It makes no sense, right?
Well, the company is absolutely obsessed with analytics and what people are searching for. Okay. And what I can, because I do know a lot about the online business world and a lot of people who create things and market them in various different places like Amazon. And what I can tell you is I'm like, car mount or desk mount for, and then I just put FTM 500D. And I'm not kidding you, like in the first page of results, there were just picture after picture after picture of Lido options.
Yeah, I don't pay for that. I'm not sponsored. I don't do anything for that. I'm so fortunate that they did that. We have a great Amazon presence. We have an Amazon store, and I went to the Amazon thing in Seattle this year, and they're kind of scary. They're kind of a scary company in regards to like how they've got the mousetrap. They've got the world now. I don't know about you, but I sit here and shows up here in the afternoon. I can order it in the morning. It's here in the afternoon, sitting on my door versus, pretty incredible.
Well, the one thing that I will say is that my first product that I bought was on Amazon, and then I was looking for the other solution, and one of the products that I saw that you had on your website wasn't in Amazon, but I just went and ordered it through you directly. Yeah. And so, go ahead.
We're looking at putting it all up on Amazon, but the problem is there's some things that are real expensive for us to build. There's just not enough margin because Amazon, you probably know this, takes about 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
It's kind of at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is. They say 28, but it's about 35, 40%. So you have to have enough margin in there.
Yep.
so you can make a living, and then also for them. And so it's so there's some of our higher end products we probably could do it by not doing FBA. They call it FBA. You're familiar with FBA?
Yeah, fulfilled by Amazon.
Right. Probably more like FBM, fulfilled by merchant. So we put it up there, we would ship it, and that way we could probably do that. But
I happen to be very much aware of those behind the scenes kind of decisions. And so as soon as I saw, it's like, okay, this product's here, but it's not on Amazon. Because I immediately searched to see if it's on Amazon so I could get it next day.
Right.
And it wasn't.
Yeah,
and I'm
absolutely.
like, well, I understand probably a part of it would be the reason that you just said is like, I'd much rather Lido Radio get as much margin, and I'm okay. As much as I've been conditioned to get things same day, next day, or within 2 days, I think I'll be okay if I wait, 3 or 4 days, 3 to 5 days. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, but so we're always evaluating that, but we're a small company, and that, we're evaluating it, and what do we send up there? And what we're finding is we send as much as we can up. We should send as much as we possibly can up there. You don't want to fight the gorilla there because not just fighting is the wrong word. You need to use them because the thing they're offering the customer the next day or same day delivery is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
And it's a great product. And I can tell you right now, you probably hear this a lot, but I'm going to tell you because I know as a business owner, you need to always hear, because we can shrug off or take for granted just how much of a difference you're making and what kind of reputation you have out there. But I'm a part of the Northern Kentucky Amateur Radio Club. And I can tell you right now, I would say almost every single person that I have met in the club and seen their car has Lido Radio products inside of the car.
Wow. That's awesome.
Every person that has a product that I've talked to them about your product, they all have met you personally at a ham fest or something, a hamvention in Dayton or whatever. They all say incredible things about how present and personable you are and how much you are just engaging and answer their questions. And I don't know if I should say this. I'll edit it out if you want me to. But one of my friends in the Northern Kentucky Amateur Radio Club says, you know what? I had this one piece and this I needed. I don't know if something broke or if something happened, but he said, I called the number on the website and it was Jim's cell phone, and he was out and about, and he answered the call, and he's like, "Dude, I'll get that taken care of for you." What an incredible guy! And I just want you to know that your reputation is amazing out here.
Oh, good. Well, let me tell you, that's learned because when we first started, I don't want to put a downer on my company, but when we first started, I'll give you my journey. So when I first started, I left Icom, right? We didn't have to give you that kind of service. So it was good service, but if we shipped it within a week, we're good, right? I mean, if you can get, especially the dealers, you get their dealer order out in a week and that's fine. So I was used to that. So I would get back to my customers in a week. They're furious. They're absolutely furious. And they're flaming me online. This guy didn't get back to me for a week, so we did it. It was a learning curve. From when we first started, when I left, a manufacturer to working with direct retail customers, totally different thing. And it was a learning curve. And we took our lumps, like I would say in 2010, it was, that's when we were really learning that's when we really started to really try to grow Lido. And we were shipping our stuff in 7 days. That does not fly at all. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. We did change our ways. But it was a learning curve that, especially today, I don't know. I think marketing today is more about the face of the company has to be a person. I don't think people are really want to see the large company anymore. I think they want to see the person that's kind of that's behind the company. Whether you can interface with people or not, they still need to has to have the personality of the owner. I think that's really key. So I appreciate you saying that, but.
Well, I tell you,
it's interesting. I've known most of these people for years. I've seen these faces for years, right? So yeah.
Well, I tell you, it's working for you, and it made an impact on me. Like I said, within minutes of looking for my solution, I found your products, and Amazon, even in the display images, had a little video, and it was a video of you personally showing how the product is used, showing the various different ways, and educating on the product. And I'm like, yeah, and I didn't think, it's like, at the time, I'm like, I don't know if that's the guy that's the owner, the creator, if he's just an employee, whatever. But as time went on, it's like, oh, no, that's Jim, and Jim's a super guy, and it's like, and there, absolutely a great reputation. I just wanted to let you know there.
Well, thank you.
I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about you personally, and of course everybody who uses your products, including myself. Now, I'm a raving fan.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
The one thing I couldn't find in my research before we did this interview, what's your call sign?
Oh, that's a cool story. I'll give you the short version. It was N7 MBA, November 7, Mike Bravo Alpha, when I was with Icom. I left Icom and was on my journey we talked about, met my wife, got too busy. My license lapsed, right? So 2 months ago, I went back and took the test again. So I got my general class because they L me through to the general class, and I'm now N7 LDO.
Nice. So
is November 7 LDO.
November 7. Okay. So LDO. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Pretty cool. And I just got it 2 months ago. I'm on the air. I'm getting back on the air. I've got a FTM. I've got a FTM 500 and FT 891. I've got I don't know which one to put in. I've got a 2016 Acura that I'm thinking of putting things in, because what's cool, we're getting better with our videos. Like, we wanted to show the video, but it'd be nice to have the radio on, right? I mean, when you're showing these videos, I think it gives you more credibility. If the radio's on, you're actually using it while you put the mounting solution in. And we haven't found the perfect mounting solution yet, but we're working on it. But so that's it. That's kind of what we do now.
That's awesome. I love it. November 7 LDO for Lido.
Yeah.
All right, Jim. It has been an honor to connect with you, and I will put this out. I'm super excited. It's lidoradio.com, correct?
Lido, that's us.
lidoradio.com. LIDO radio.com. Jim, many blessings to you, and hope you have great holidays here coming up. Thank you for sharing your story. I've really been entertained, also found a lot of insight and valuable educational information that you've shared along your journey. So I really appreciate your time here today.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, there you go. That was my conversation with Jim Newcomb of Lido Radio. Go over to lidoradio.com and check out some of the things he's got going on over there as far as products and services that he's developed for folks. Again, I recognize that as I put this out in this podcast, very few people probably are involved in the amateur radio community. But I wanted to come here at the end of this particular episode in this podcast and share with you some of the key insights that were speaking to me. I mean, as we were having this conversation, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally digging this as an amateur radio enthusiast myself. However, forgetting everything related to the amateur radio aspect of the conversation, here's what speaks to me about the entrepreneurial journey. The first insight that came out of it is the power of serendipity, how unexpected opportunities will allow you to experience things if you're open to pursue them. So I'm reminded of Jim's story, which, by the way, I had this conversation with Jim yesterday. So it's been probably about 12, 14 hours since then. So Jim was sent by his father to go out and find a job. It's like, listen, you're not mature enough here. You're not showing up consistently. You're not taking this seriously. I think it's time for you to go out. And by the way, sometimes we can experience a situation where we feel like we've been put out. Oh my gosh, what have I done, or whatever. But it's very clear that Jim's like, okay, well, I'll go out and figure out something. And I love the fact that some job agency said, hey, we found this job in this field, and here's the place, here's the address to go to. And they sent him seemingly to the wrong place, and how that ended up being in the warehouse of what would become Icom America. You can't hand somebody and say, listen, just go and do this and you'll get this result. There are just some things that if you are prepared for opportunities will open up that you just have to be open to. So one of the things that I love about this aspect, what was it that made Jim Newcomb a success in having such a long and very profitable career in Icom America? And then eventually what led him to create a product-based business that serves amateur radio and other people in the radio industry, and that has had so much success today that he's now full-time doing it. It's because he's open to opportunities. He's not quick to judge something as a failure. So, for example, the story starts off, he goes and this guy at the warehouse says, listen, hey, I'm looking for somebody. I'd like to interview you now. He didn't say, no, I'm in the wrong place. I'm sorry, I need to get to this other thing. And this isn't. No, he was open to the opportunity. And just being aware of serendipity. Serendipity is just those things that you just can't plan, but they just seem to work out. I kind of think of things like divine appointments is another way of thinking about this. It's like I never know who it is that I'm going to come across today, that if I have a conversation with them, it could lead to a radical, completely different path in my life. And I'm always confronted with, it seems, what's called divine appointments. It's like, wow, I for some reason, I decided to go to the gym 35 minutes later than I normally do. And then when I got to the gym, I didn't feel inspired to go straight in and start my workout. Instead, I drove to the back parking lot and I sat there and read some chapters from a book and I did some journaling. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I think it's time for me to go to work out. And then I go in, and right after I start my workout, a friend of mine who lives in Florida through the winter, is visiting up here in Northern Kentucky, and he just walked in, and he steps onto the Stairmaster right next to me and stands there and talks to me, and we have this amazing, engaging conversation. And quite frankly, it was so enjoyable, not just because I really enjoyed talking with this friend of mine. It was so great to see him. We got to have lots of insights that came out of the conversation, and not to mention the fact that my workout went even faster, and it was just an incredible experience. And the serendipity of that moment that wouldn't have happened if I left on time that morning, if I would have gotten upset with myself for not having enough self-discipline to go straight into the gym as soon as I got there. No, it's just following the flow and following. It's like I'm always at the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, and I'm doing the right thing, and just having this faith that serendipity, divine appointments, however you want to see this, those unexpected opportunities may not be expected by us, but I feel I've seen so much of it that there's way too much to be chalked up as coincidence. All right, the next thing that stands out to me is mentorship. How much of my life is the success that I've experienced over all of these years have resulted from the conversations that I've had with mentors in my life. Now, in the interview with Jim, he talked about leaders like Bob Brunkow, Dr. Al Chandler, and how they shaped his skills and his perspective in his professional path. Mentorship matters. If you don't have mentors in your life, I encourage you to seek them out. By the way, mentorship is something that I even offer to many clients who work with me. So if you're looking for somebody on the entrepreneurial journey, make sure you reach out to me. My email address is cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. The next insight that stood out to me is the idea of starting with a problem. When I think about Jim's success with Lido radio products, he, from a very early conversation at one of the industry events, how am I going to install this in my high-end vehicle without drilling holes? And that problem, that issue persisted in his mind. So when he went to go create an opportunity for himself down the road, when he decided, I'm not going to move back to Washington State, I'm going to stay in Southern California, where this woman that I love lives. I'm going to stay here. And of course, that means leaving, having a very difficult decision to leave that career in one of the top companies in the industry. And so obviously he went and found some immediate scenario here. We're going to talk about balancing passion with practicality. But when he actually did start a side hustle, he didn't go out there and say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'd like to create, and I'm going to go find somebody and try to convince them this is needed. And there, I see a lot of that happening in this world. However, what he did is he created a company around a genuine need that he had seen for many years. I know people are looking for this solution to this significant problem. And and as you heard in the conversation, that's what immediately brought his product to my attention within like hours, it seems, of actually being issued my amateur radio license and making a purchase of a radio that I wanted to install in my car without drilling holes. All right, so starting with the problem. Another insight on the entrepreneurial journey, balancing passion and practicality. I've talked about this many times, about far too many people quit the day job before the day dream is able to pay the bills. And this can put you in a scarcity mindset. It can put you in a situation where you seem desperate, and you can avoid a lot of challenge if you would just go out and get a job and make a decision to earn an income doing something that allows you to build what it is that you're building slowly and sustainably to a level that allows you to eventually make an easier transition. Now, Jim needed something right away, and he didn't leave Icom and the opportunity to go back to Washington State and immediately rely on Lido radio products. No, he's like, okay, let me leverage my relationships. And that's the next insight, the importance of cultivating strong professional relationships and networks when you're going through life. Meet people. Look for who those people are, what is going on in their world. Find out ways that you can bring value to their lives, build meaningful relationships, because you never know when you might be in need for a recommendation, a referral, or some hint of advice or help along your journey through life. So I love that he did that. He also saw the long game in business. And this is another thing that I hear a lot of people do. They give up before their dream has a chance to really succeed. They have this idea, I'm going to leave my day job. I've got this much financial runway, and I give myself 18 months to get to this financial scenario. I've the number of times people, when I first sit down and have a complimentary one-on-one coaching conversation to find out if they might be a good fit for the type of coaching or mentoring that I do, or if they're going to join the Next Level Mastermind, they're in this scenario. And when people say, I have no audience, I have no track record, I have no validation of a product or service, but I do have a financial runway, I'm leaving my day job, and I'm going to make something happen within 18 months. Now, I'm not saying that there's nobody that's ever done it, but the number of people who go into it without a validated product or service or a problem that they know that they can solve and that people are willing to pay to do it, all of the stuff that needs to be there for your target audience to provide a sustainable and profitable business. The reality is that even when you have a validated product, you absolutely know that there are lots of people who are experiencing the pain that your problem has or solves. Even then, I love the story of Jim's Lido radio products, how it was a part-time venture for over a decade before becoming a full-time success. And you have to have so much persistence and perseverance if you truly want to succeed in your entrepreneurial journey. Iterating and improving. I loved how Jim's story reflects the evolving nature of entrepreneurship, that you have to embrace detours along the way. You're going to have things that once worked that didn't work. You're going to have to learn from each phase of the journey. And you only find success when you are sticking and staying aligned to the vision of what it is that you're setting out to do. It's a journey. And I also loved his idea of creating better solutions, but he didn't wait until he had the perfect solution. He got started and he improved on his product and refined it over time. And also I loved his understanding of, oh, wow, customer feedback is dictating something different here than what it was in the corporate world where I was working with dealers. So many amazing things stood out to me, and that is why I shared this interview today with Jim Newcomb. I'd love to hear from you. What did you hear in Jim's story that resonated with you? My email address is cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Email me today. I can't wait to hear from you. And by the way, if you are on the entrepreneurial path and you are looking to do life with other entrepreneurs who are absolutely in it for the long haul, you are in it to win it. You're going to figure it out. You're willing to grow and pivot and find success that is aligned with your vision of what you want to create, not only in your business, but in your life. And you understand the value of bouncing your ideas off of somebody else who is not limited to your own perceptions of what is possible. You're not limited to your own level of experience, your own education of the things you've already been exposed to when it comes to wisdom and knowledge. If you'd like to benefit from the education, the experience, skills, talents, abilities, the areas of expertise, the resources of other entrepreneurs, I encourage you to consider joining the Next Level Mastermind. This is a weekly group of entrepreneurs that I've been facilitating since November 2017. And if just you could understand that you in a mastermind group of environment where every single person in this group shares this same vision and passion for having a life on your terms, full-time self-employed business owner. And not only that, but where every single one of them is as committed to your success as you are committed to their success. And for 90 minutes every single week, you are inspired, not just by getting answers to your own questions, your own obstacles, your own ideas in your hot seat when it comes around, but the things that other people are pursuing and asking and coming up against and the insights that come out of it exponentially. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says you can actually accomplish more in 1 year in a healthy mastermind group alliance than you can in a lifetime on your own. That is available to you in the Next Level Mastermind. If you're interested, apply today at nextlevelmastermind.info. That's .info, not .com. Nextlevelmastermind.info, link in the bio. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything on your entrepreneurial journey to the next level.
Mindset Answer Man.